First of all, welcome to the meeting, and Joe, you are so not new. You were going along with one of the oldest members here.
No, longest serving.
Longest serving member.
You said new here.
Welcome to our meeting at lovely George Dado's house. I'm waiting for him to look over. Any new members? This one, new member? No, not you. No, not him. All right, no new members here. Wonderful. So I'm going to turn this right over to Mark, who's going to do some introductions and some thank yous.
This is Mark's minute, and it'll probably take 3. So first thing, so Carissa and her merry band of conference fiends, team, cleared about $4,000 on the conference. So I thought that was fantastic.
Woo!
Exactly. And whenever I see her next, I'll be handing her a Hive tool with her name on it, and everybody on her conference team gets one of those, and we'll have a blast. Is Sheena up here somewhere? Okay, there you go. Charlie Coulter, for those who don't know, has just recently had to step down from being the Queen team lead. I have something for Charlie, but I don't see Charlie here. I'll show you what it is, and at some future meeting we'll get it to him. It's a massive smoker. This will last 1 hive. But the reality is, that the bee away stuff, the pheromone that you put on, and you can chases the bees out of supers. You can actually put that in a cloth in there and turn it into a go away bee little smoker. So there you go. And I also got to call out Mike Joe standing there in the back. He's picked up the Queen team lead position. So Mike is doing that for anybody that's interested in dealing with queens and helping run that Queen team and working with Mike on that. Please reach out to him directly, and I think it'll be a wonderful thing. For those who have not seen the trailer, it's sitting down in the back. We're going to be selling the stuff out of the trailer this afternoon or during the plant sale. So if you want to buy a plant, go to the plant side. If you want to buy a nuke, like an assembled wax dip nuke or an unassembled nuke or a patch or a hat or a t-shirt, you can just go down to the trailer. It's where we'll be. So Bill, Sean, and I emptied the trailer. We said, okay, Bill, just let us know when you're starting to build out, and then we'll come help. And the next afternoon, he sends a note out saying, okay, I'm done. So when you look at the trailer, you'll see it's got shelves, and it's fantastic. Great job to Phil Rafferty is running up the back there. He did a great job on that. Everybody who needs carpentry work done, go grab Bill. Also a beer brewer, if I remember correctly. All right, Chuck Beebe. I just saw he's out there getting coffee. Hands up, helping us do the hives, the VA hives, which is the Honeybee Initiative for Veterans Empowerment and Support. He's kind of leading it from the club perspective, and from the VA, Angela is leading it from the VA side. Works at the VA and is running that. So we had our first in-hive session. We've been doing the background stuff, the ground school, if you will, for a couple of months now. And then I also want to call out Chuck for helping out with the beginner's course. He's been at almost every lab helping out, and then also with the wax dipping that we just did. So Chuck, come up here. I got something for you. For those of you who don't know, Chuck is a former Marine, and I didn't bring crayons because I knew he'd be hungry. Don't eat the crayons. But a coloring book from... Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it. And then finally, a shout out to George for allowing us to take over his house. So for those who haven't figured it out, Kathy is not here today. She and Angela are off to a basketball tournament. So that's why we're kind of here, yes. It worked out very nicely. Also for working with Joe Z at the Cheslin Nuke Yard, as well as the wax dipping, the plant team, the VA hives, and generally giving me good advice. Don't do that, Mark. I tried it. It didn't work. This is going to fail miserably. And then when I do not listen to George and I do it anyway, it fails miserably. So, thank you. Keep telling me not to do stuff that I shouldn't do. And then finally, Sheena, could you come up here for a second? Oh, yeah. Now you got to get out of that chair. Her merry band of plant pirates done an amazing job in the plant sale. I'm not going to clap or you'll hear through the speaker. About a third of the plants you guys grew, correct?
I think it's more than that.
More than maybe half? Maybe two-thirds?
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds of the plants were done by the plant team in the basement, starting in like January. So an amazing job. Again, when I said George was involved with plant sale, he was more than involved. Sheena ran that crew, and I think it was a great time. So I think you sorted, get back over here, trying to do that. So I do have something for Sheena. It only took me 5 hours to do, but here's a CCBA water bottle. It already had the logo on it, but it didn't have Sheena's name. Lead horticulturist.
I'm a lead horticulturalist.
And wait a second, then one more thing. Look at where your thumb is. Look at the bottom of the bottle.
Oh.
Yeah, there's asters, there's sunflowers, there's lavender, Joe Pye weed,
Bee balm.
bee balm.
Aw. Oh, that's really sweet.
Good thing that she could remember the names because I put them on there. I only recognize 2 or 3. I'm not
Aw, that's really cool.
a plant person.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. You get a hug. Thanks for
On
spending-
camera even. All right, thank you so much. And anybody in the beginner's course or the apprentice program anybody in the beginner's course, the apprentice program that has not gotten their hive tool that comes with the program, please see me after the meeting and I can get that over to you. All right, now, George, you can start trying to get up out of that chair. It looks very comfortable, but you're up, bub. He's going to talk for a couple of minutes.
You got 10 minutes.
I got 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
What cut?
Hey, no hard cut here. Welcome,
Hard cut.
everybody. Thanks for coming. Just another round of applause for Sheena for doing this. This is her 4th year doing our plant committee, and the plant committee has put out thousands of plants into our local area. And as beekeepers, we know that how important that is, right? I mean, we're really farmers, right? When you think about it, beekeepers are much like farmers, except for we're not feeding our livestock, right? Generally, unless we're feeding them sugar water, which ideally we shouldn't be doing, right? So how are we feeding our bees? Plants, right? How are we feeding our bees as plants? So we become very important advocates for our bees and for our plants, right? And I think it's great that Mark has allowed me to bring the meeting here in May and to really put spotlight on the importance of plants in general and the importance of us being stewards of the environment and also planting native plants whenever possible. So I really thank Mark for allowing this to happen, Sheena for putting the work into making this happen, and you guys for showing up and taking home some plants. So again, round of applause for everybody who's here today. It's really wonderful. Now, I flipped out about a week ago, believe it or not. I flip out daily. My mental health ain't great recently. But I walked outside and I looked around, and you know what I saw about 10 days ago? Frost. Trees that are basically look dead. Turn around and look. You can see there's a redbud, native redbud right there, basically all brown. If you look off to the right, if you look out to the red house off to the right, you'll see an oak tree that's all brown. You'll see this magnolia is not native, but you'll see these leaves don't look great too. If you look over there, you'll see button bushes that are brown. You know what I mean? Like it's and I woke up and I freaked out because I didn't know what was going on. And I sent text pictures to Carissa and to some other people. I was like, what is going to Mark? I was like, what is happening here? My trees look brown. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was a fungal disease or what it was. But you know what happened? It was 91 degrees April 16th, and it was 21 degrees April 21st. Now, I don't want to turn this political, and I don't want to make it bigger than that, and I don't want to say why, but that's the reality, right? It's 91 frickin' degrees in April, and then it's 26 to 21 degrees 5 days later, and this is what we got out of it, right? And you know what happens? I'm taking up my 10 minutes because I'm on a platform here, but I'm not quitting. And you go out there. No, this is important, I think. So I'm like freaking out. I'm like, what's going on? And somebody said, well, George, it's frosted. Don't worry, it's frosted. I said, are they going to come back? And you know what? Nobody the heck knows. You know why? Because it doesn't happen in the past. Nobody knows. It's not 91 degrees in April followed by 21 degrees. No one knows. I assume these trees are going to make it. Otherwise, my tree guy is going to make a lot of money on this, right? But I hope these trees make it. But nobody knows. Somebody told me in Kentucky this happened 5 years ago and the trees made it. Maybe our speaker will tell us that these trees are going to make it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Anyway, but then what's even worse, this is what's worse. Like, that's bad enough, and whatever blame you want to put, you can put whatever blame you want to put on it. I know where I'm putting it, but I'm not going to say where I'm putting it because this is a bee meeting. But you know what's worse? Here's what's worse. Can I throw Ike under the bus? Why not? We all love Ike. Ike at Forest Hill, he makes all the woodworking stuff, you know. I said, Ike. I went out there to talk to Ike. I said, Ike, have you noticed that all the trees, like a third of the trees are brown? And you know what he said? No. I went to my neighbor. I went to my neighbor right there. I said, and Jay's a smart guy. Jay's a policeman. I said, Jay, have you noticed that like a third of the trees around here are brown? And he said, no. I went to the guy across the street. I said, you notice these trees are brown? And he's like, no. I went to my daughter. I said, Angela, she's only in 8th grade. She may have an excuse for not knowing. And she couldn't even bother to listen to me. That's a hard no. They're like, Dad, this is not relevant to my life. Well, there you go, Sheena. Yes, it is. That's the more concerning thing, is that we've all become, like, unaware. We live in a concrete jungle. We live disconnected, and we don't know that it's going from frickin' 91 degrees to 21 degrees in 5 days, and it's basically killing a third of our, not killing, but it's basically frosted a third of our trees. That has never happened in my lifetime. You think people should be aware of that?
People with the orchards are.
Yeah, the farmers are, right? Thank goodness it didn't kill our black locust, otherwise we'd be flipping out too. But we're not, because our black locust bloomed and we're going to make honey and we're going to be all okay. But the apple tree farmers, the peach tree farmers, they're not okay. And you know what? Everybody should not be okay about this. Honestly. Everyone should not be okay about this, and everyone should be aware. And part of our role as beekeepers, and a part of this role as this association, is to make people aware of the potential toxicities that we are doing to our environment. I will stop it at that, but you know, I think it's great that you're here. It's great that we're planting local plants. If you're a beekeeper and you're not planting local plants, you're a bee haver. You know, they talk about bee havers killing bees. Bee havers are people that own bees who don't plant plants, honestly. You're a bee haver, you know. And you better behave. Am I way out of bounds, Shayna?
No, I'm just agreeing with you. If you're a bee haver, you need to behave.
You need to behave. You need to plant local plants. I'm speaking to the choir. Every time I say this, I know I'm speaking to the choir, and I apologize for that, because if you guys didn't think that this wasn't important, you wouldn't be here. So it's the other members that I'm speaking to, you know, that care more about the black locust blooming and filling up their supers than being stewards of the environment. Enough said. How did I do, Sheena?
Great.
Thanks.
I love you, George. Thank you for doing this. Love your passion.
No, it's all important. You know, if you're not aware, you're going to get kicked in the butt. I tell my kids this. I said, look, kids, if you're not aware, you're going to get kicked in the butt. I told my son still thinks DFS should have showed up at this house, because at 3 years old, he had a temper tantrum. He fell down and he started crying on the floor. You know what I did? I stepped on him. No, I literally stepped on him. I said, dude, you should be aware. If you're going to fall on the floor, someone's going to step on you. Anyway, he turned out okay, I think.
Only a little PTSD.
He's a PhD at Hopkins trying to solve microfluidic problems for all the engineers in the world. He's okay out there. Yes.
May I just share that yesterday I heard a very sad interview with one of the members of the Linvilla
Orchard?
family members who
Uh-huh.
works there, and she said that they have lost their entire apple crop
Yes.
and 80% of their peach crop.
Yes.
She was devastated.
Yeah, millions of dollars, right? Millions of dollars.
She said this has never happened.
And hopefully Lynn Villa won't turn into a shopping mall or an Amazon warehouse or something like that.
Produce from other locations
Yeah.
as well. But still, it was a very sad interview.
Right. So, as beekeepers, the final message is, we're advocates for the environment. We're here for plants. We're trying to keep this environment as healthy as possible, given that, so telling people not to spray their herbicides or their pesticides, and telling people to plant local plants, and telling people to buy local honey, because without beekeepers there would be no local honey, right? So we're all important, and that's all I have to say about that. I apologize if I offended anybody. Not really. It's how I feel. We should all be allowed to say how we feel. Anyway, right? Right. But raise your hand if your hives, if any of your hives swarmed so far. Raise your hand. I'm raising my hand. So about half of us. So really, beekeeping in April and May is about swarming.
Question: how many of you haven't really checked closely to see if you're hive?
How many have no clue, right? Yeah. So this is what bees do right now. They swarm. This is peak swarm season. They are hanging in the trees. Why do we not? We know why we don't want bees. Well, bees swarm because that's what they want to do. You can have a nuke that swarms. You can have a 10-frame single that swarms. I like 10-frame single brood chambers. But they swarm. Doubles will swarm. Hives that are really tall without queen excluders will swarm. They will all swarm. Honestly, that's what they want to do. So it does take some management to prevent bees from swarming, and that is the beekeeper's role. In some ways, this time of year is to prevent swarming. How do you prevent swarming? It is very difficult, honestly. You want to sort of keep the queen with room to lay is the bottom line, right? So if the queen has room to lay, she's less likely to swarm. If the brood chamber if they start backfilling the brood chamber with nectar, and there's no room for the queen to lay, and the nurse bees have nothing to do, all of a sudden these bees have an idea, right? And they're going to leave. It's not the queen that decides, it's the workers that decide. So the workers decide, hey, we have enough of a force, we have enough drones, we have enough nectar coming in, there's no room for the queen to lay, let's take the queen and take her to a different spot, and they start deciding to swarm. As a general rule, once a queen cell, right? So a queen cell takes how many days from an egg to a queen? Come on. 16, thank you. We have to impress our speaker, pretend we know something here about bees. So 16 days, right? 16 days from egg to the queen emerges. The egg is laid on day 1. It's an egg for how many days? 3, right? So it's an egg for 3 days, and then they cap the queen cell on day number 8. So that's 5 days from egg to cap queen cell. What happens when the queen cell is capped? They swarm. They leave. So you have 8 days to do something about that. That is generally 7 days. Not 10, not 2 weeks, that's 7 days. So if you are not in your hives every 7 days, this time of year, you know what will happen? They are highly likely to swarm. So if you're not in your hive, cutting out the early queen cells or cutting out the queen cups and making sure the queen has room to lay, they will swarm. I will tell you, we messed up significantly out at the Chestnut Apiary the past 2 weeks ago. I won't go into the details. I'd love to because it's very illustrative, but I've way over my 10 minutes. But I've got 3 extra. They're being kind to me. I must be saying something relevant because they've given me more time. They will swarm. A nuke will swarm. So you just have to go in there weekly. And what are you doing weekly when you go in there? You're removing cups. you're looking for, I remove cups because I never know what cup has an egg in it, right? Honestly, you know, it's so hard to tell. So I'm taking my hive tool. Some people cringe at this, but this is what I do. I take my hive tool and run the lower part of the frames, right? So I don't have my hive tool on me, but I'm basically scraping the bottom of the frames because that's where the
There's one right there on the table.
that's where the queen cups are, right at the bottom of the frame. So if you remove the queen cups, you're removing the eggs. Yes, they will rebuild the queen cups. You know, that's not really doing anything. But all it takes is one queen cup to have an egg in it, and that's going to become a queen cell. So for me, it's easier just to run my hive tool on the bottom of the frames and to remove the queen cups, right? So every week I'm basically removing queen cups, and I'm making sure that there's room in the bottom for the queen to lay in. Whether or not you do the demery, whether or not you checkerboard, whether or not whatever you do, you're basically trying to give the queen and the nurse bees room to lay and take care of brood. Because once it gets congested, they're going to go. You could have a 5-frame nuke box and it will swarm. So it's anyway, they're going to do that. So basically, swarm season ends generally the I mean, any hive can swarm at any time. I don't want to get into like an argument with anybody because that's not what I like to do. But generally, come June, the swarm season's generally over, right? So you can go on vacation once June hits, but up until April and May should not be vacation time for beekeepers, honestly. You know, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of work to be done in April and May. The other thing, so what you have to do with your bees right now, that's what Mark asked me to talk about 15 minutes ago, was to basically prevent swarming, remove swarm cells, give them room to give the queen room to lay, which requires weekly inspection up until June. The other thing that bees do right now is what? Make honey, right? May is our honey month. It's our plant month for sure, but plant month and honey month kind of go together, right? Because if we didn't have plants, we wouldn't have honey. So May is really the best. I mean, bees bring forage all the time, but as far as weight gain on the hives, when the hives are putting the maximum amount of weight gain, it's the month of May, right? So if you're not sure, I always talk about bee space, bee population to hive space, and want to make that equal and not make the hive too big. But this is the time of year where you want to add your extra super. So if you're not sure, just add an extra super. Make some honey for yourself. You're not going to go wrong in the month of May by adding extra space. It is the one month that you can make space. The other thing, Mark is standing next to me. I'm going to say one more thing. If you haven't, I get to say one more thing. I talked a lot about ecology and stewardship and not about bees, but these people want to hear about bees, Mark. They're beekeepers.
We're going to be here for a while after that. We can all talk about bees while we buy plants.
Okay, one last word. If you haven't made one last word, which is really important. I'm only passing my wisdom of all my failures. If you haven't made your splits already, right? If you haven't, made your swarm cells and made your splits, right? You really want to get your splits made by the second week, by the summer solstice, June 21st, right? So just as a word of mine, if you prevent swarming and your hives are getting really big, it's nice to make your splits like early June so you have some extra colonies going into winter. So we'll talk about that at the June meeting probably, but just to put that on your mind, like the end of June. And if you need queen cells and you need queens, hopefully the queen team, Michael Joe, raise your hand. Michael Joe is way into this. He is super passionate about this. He deserves a round of applause, like anybody who volunteers for the CCBA. And one last thought, if you're not happy today, Tony's brought some peach wine to help you, peach mead. So, anyway, thanks, Mark. And spread the word. Tell people plants are important. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, George. And a word of warning about the mead. Tony, what's the alcohol content level?
Hi.
16%. So don't go up there thinking it's, no, it's the real deal. I'm going to turn it over to Sheena.
Hi, I'm Sheena. Thanks for buying plants and supporting the club, because that's what we're all about. It's about supporting the club. Okay, thank you, George, for that passionate presentation. So I want to let you know that I'm really excited about today's speaker. This is Pandora Young. Pandora. I found Pandora at Longwood Gardens. They were talking about ephemeral native plants, and I thought they were really great at captivating the audience. And I'm really excited to see what they have to say about today's plants. So Pandora is a senior land steward who has worked at Longwood Gardens since 2005. Starting as a horticulturalist, a real one, not an honorary one, for Pierce's Woods, a display garden area showcasing species native to eastern North America, where they worked for 18 years. For the last 4 years, they have been a member of the Land Stewardship and Ecology team, helping care for nearly 750 acres of Longwood's natural lands. Pandora is passionate about connecting people with plants and fostering healthy, more resilient ecosystems. And I'm going to tell you, like, they're definitely passionate about this because they're coming here today on their own capacity. They're not representing Longwood. This is your own time.
Yes.
They're really excited about being here and talking to us about plants. I hope you brought your plant questions, your genuine ones. And here they are. They're going to talk about biodiversity in our home landscape. Thank you so much, Pandora.
Thanks for that intro, Sheena. Thanks for making me feel so welcome right away. I just wanted to show I was made to feel at home right away by being pooped on almost immediately. That shows there's life and biodiversity. I sat under this black cherry tree and you can see the tent caterpillars going to town on it. And that's food for the birds. So that's what biodiversity looks like.
And I honestly could have listened to another half hour of George preaching. That was great.
Oh, you didn't. On camera.
So I have some cards to keep me on track, so that because when I talk about things I'm passionate about, I can go on tangents, but I want to try to make sure there's enough time for questions at the end. So yes, I want to thank Sheena again for inviting me to speak on a topic I'm super passionate about, and it seems like most of you are too. When I drive around or walk around my neighborhood, I see landscapes that I can only describe as deathscapes and some that are lifescapes. So we're here to support lifescapes here today. The topic, boosting biodiversity in your home landscape. Now, every landscape is unique, so rather than do these are my top 10 plants for every yard, I'm going to try to give you the resources to help select the plants that are right for your unique landscape, but also there's so much more than just the species you plant, though this plant sale is a great opportunity to get some really good deals on native species. So, yeah. I did have some resources back here. All right. So, why is biodiversity important? Is it just a buzzword? So, to me, on a personal level, other than being pooped on underneath tent caterpillars, biodiversity is going into my backyard and seeing blue-winged wasps and a myriad of other native pollinators, visiting the mountain mint I planted. It makes me feel like I have the most popular dinner party in town to go out and see that. It's just like, yes, everyone's coming to my house. I've put out the welcome mat. They're all here. It's standing in a woodland that I care for that has undisturbed leaf litter, and it's seeing a Luna moth emerge. A Luna moth that would not have emerged if that leaf litter had been removed or disturbed. It's looking at the Dutchman's pipes, which I did bring one here today, growing on my front porch, and hoping that one day I will get to see the pipevine swallowtail caterpillar, that a pipevine swallowtail butterfly will come along and see my house and be like, this is where I want to raise my young. So those are all the very personal reasons. That's what biodiversity means to me on a personal level. On a much larger scale, I think we all understand that life feeds life, and having a more diverse landscape with native plants boosts so many other species. And I'm going to be focusing on insects a lot in this talk, and as beekeepers, I imagine you're all going to be fairly on board with this. Insects are essential to life. They recycle nutrients. There are garbage folks, and they are food for other creatures, and they pollinate our crops. So in the words of American naturalist, ecologist, and entomologist E.O. Wilson, I want to make sure I get his words right. The truth is we need invertebrates, but they don't need us. If human beings were to disappear tomorrow, the world would go on with little change. But if invertebrates were to disappear, I doubt that the human species could live more than a few months. So 1 out of every 3 bites we take is because of the work of pollinators. In addition to, honeybees are far from the only pollinators. If you enjoy tomatoes and blueberries, you are enjoying the work of bumblebees, whose special buzz pollination helps trigger the release of pollen in those crops. So if you have eaten a pawpaw, which if you haven't, it's the largest tree fruit native to North America, or enjoyed an avocado, you might want to thank a fly. So bees do pollinate avocado trees, but they have actually found that flies can be better at cross-pollinating avocados because they move more randomly through the orchard between trees, less focused. So flies often described as lazy pollinators, but they operate at cooler temperatures than honeybees and our native bees. So not only do we depend on insects for the food we eat, but 96% of terrestrial songbirds rely on caterpillars to feed their young. So, and why do we need to help them? I think George touched on this a little bit, but climate change, habitat degradation and fragmentation, the indiscriminate use of pesticides, and even artificial light are all serious threats to pollinators on the planet and in our backyards. So I got to do the sad stuff before I talk about the things we can do and to help bring them back. But at least 28% of North America's native bumblebee populations have declined significantly. And 19% of butterflies in the U.S. are at risk of extinction. And particularly monarch butterflies since the 1980s and 90s, they have experienced declines of 80 to 97%. So really drastic. Creating pollinator habitats and eliminating pesticide use, particularly insecticides. I imagine as beekeepers that all resonates with you in your own yard are some of the best ways you can help to reverse these trends. Let's reverse these trends and help build resiliency. So, all right, where to start? I like to start with food. So, every landscape is unique, but we're going to go over some common principles. So, a lot of native species have developed special ecological relationships between plants and insects. And these ecological relationships, they take thousands of years to develop. I often get asked the question, this species was introduced 100 years ago. Is it considered native now? No, that's not the scale that evolution works on. So, for example, species like monarch caterpillars requiring our native milkweeds to feed on. If milkweeds are gone from the landscape, if you can't raise the babies, there will be no adults. And they can't just switch to another plant. They can't, the caterpillars of the monarch butterfly cannot feed on a butterfly bush. In fact, butterfly bush is not food to any, it's not a larval host to any native species of caterpillars. Maybe one. I think I read that there might be one. So if you have a limited landscape, my yard is only about 1/8 of an acre. Looking for keystone species is a way of maximizing impact. So what's a keystone? A keystone is like structurally, it's the part that holds the structure together. It's the most crucial part of a system. So some species play an outsized role in supporting our ecosystems, and their loss would be the most destabilizing. We've definitely had loss of species, the chestnuts, the ashes. We're losing, the beeches are being affected by beech leaf disease. So I will say that when I was a student at Longwood, it was really meaningful to me to get to replant an American elm because of the work that was being done to find Dutch elm disease resistant elm trees, and that planting, I now can sit in the shade of that very large elm tree, and it's like, we brought one back. And the work of the Chestnut Foundation trying to bring back the American chestnut, and with that there are specialized insects that feed only on there's the greater chestnut weevil that is that only feeds on the American chestnut and couldn't feed on the Chinese chestnut. In areas where we're bringing back the American chestnut hybrids, we've actually been able to find this insect that we thought might be completely gone. So that fills my heart with hope. So back to keystone species. Trees that support the greatest number of caterpillar species, because caterpillars are often the most particular group. There are some caterpillars that can feed on a range of species, but there are some that can only feed on one or maybe two species. So I brought some visual aids here today. Does anyone recognize this butterfly? Swallowtail. It is a swallowtail. Peg. This is a zebra swallowtail. And I mentioned before the largest tree fruit native to North America, the pawpaw. The zebra swallowtail butterfly, its caterpillars feed exclusively on the leaves of that tree. And the only time I've ever seen this butterfly was when I was standing in a grove of pawpaw trees. And that was one of the things that made me go, I need to grow this tree at home. I want to see this. It has zebra stripes, white and black stripes, and then it has this flash of red on the back. And seeing that flash of red in the woods, magical moment. But are you all familiar with the work of Doug Tallamy? Yeah, bringing nature home. His top 3 species for a larval host species in terms of the number of species of caterpillars they support. Does anyone know what's blooming here? These white flowers here. Black cherry. This is one of our native cherry trees. So Prunus serotina, and we have, what have we got here? Oak. So this is a black oak and a white oak. Actually, this is a swamp white oak, Quercus bicolor. And the last one, which has already finished blooming, what is this? Not a black locust. What? Willow. Yes, willow. So the acronym that a student in a class I taught a long time ago was like, did you know there's an acronym for remembering these? It's COW, cherry, oak, willow. So if you've got the cow, you've got the most impactful species in terms of supporting a myriad of caterpillars. I would recommend in most home landscapes, if you can plant a white oak over a red oak. You can plant a red oak in the background, but we are struggling with bacterial leaf scorch that is especially apparent on not on black oak trees, on red oak trees. The white oak trees don't seem to show it in the same way. So I recommend a white oak, and that is a way to feed generations not only of caterpillars, but squirrels and so much other life. So many birds eat acorns, nuthatch, and anyway, so generations to come. You'll support generations to come if you plant these 3 species. So those are three of our keystone tree species, and then when it comes to herbaceous keystone species with the highest specialized pollinators. So there are caterpillars that feed on like one tree or a couple of trees. There are also bees that they're generalists and they're specialist bees. And they're specialist bees that maybe only visit one flower, one species of flower. And the herbaceous keystone species that have the highest number of pollen specialists are goldenrods, asters, and the perennial sunflowers, the helianthus. So if you've got those, you're good. That's a really good start. So you can find really great lists of regional keystone species. I brought a binder of some of my top reference materials if you want to take a look at them afterwards. The ones I'm going to recommend to you here today are the Homegrown National Park website. Has anyone been there before? It was co-founded by Doug Tallamy, and it was part of his endeavor to our national parks are important refuges for all kinds of wildlife, but they are too scattered. They're too far apart to protect these species through corridors. And our yards at home can be part of the national park system in supporting wildlife. Y'all heard about the bear in Chester County last week. It's like, maybe I'm not talking about that form of wildlife, but Doug Tallamy's work focusing on supporting insects. I really like this website. It has a great filter searching tools for like size of plants. You can just search keystone species. Also has, I don't know if any of you live in an HOA, but or know someone in an HOA who struggles with supporting insects under the rules of where they live. But it has really good advice to people in HOAs specifically. And they also have kits for rollout gardens with curated selections of keystone plants. So it couldn't be easier. If you want like the Fisher-Price easy way to have a successful pollinator garden, they've got it. I don't work for them, but I highly support what they do. Also, the Xerces Society does plant lists by region. So Xerces Society is a society dedicated to the conservation of invertebrates. And all the work they do is around that. And they have great lists that say, hey, these are our top picks that are going to be successful in your region and support insects in your region the best. The National Wildlife Federation has keystone species lists by region. So we are Eastern Temperate Forest on their list. And in the Xerces Society list, we're the Mid-Atlantic region here. And I also love, hyperlocal, we have Mount Cuba Center's published plant trials. So Mount Cuba Center, basically just down the road. Have any of you been to Mount Cuba Center? Have you seen their plant trials? So they've done asters, they've done goldenrods, they've done sedges, they've done Monarda, the bee balms, and the mountain mints. And what they do is they evaluate them all. For ones like bee balm and mountain mint, they counted pollinators visiting. So they actually looked at, which ones are actually the best for pollinators, and they published that work. And they're growing in very ordinary garden soil, and they're growing in this area, so you know it's going to be, what their results are going to be very similar to yours. And I brought the first page of some of their trials, but their entire trials are published online. You can go through them like a book and find the species that are right for you. So, does anyone know, other than Peg, how many species of native bees there are in Pennsylvania alone? Does anyone want to wager a guess? Sheena. You got it. It's a little over 400. I think it's like around 430. Excellent. Yes. And some of those species emerge as early as March. I mean, especially when we're getting 90-degree days in April, it really freaks them out. But and they may remain active into November. So if you don't see anything blooming in your landscape or around your landscape, chances are the bees don't either. So looking at your landscape and trying to have having continuous succession of flowering to make sure, because that's their food source. So, and honestly, from a purely aesthetics, wouldn't it be nice to have something blooming in your garden at all times? So I think some of the trickier times are that very, very early spring and that late, late fall. And I will later be getting into a recommended succession based on the plants that are at this plant sale, if they're left. Easier said than done. I'll get to more specific ways later. I talked about generalist and specialist pollinators. One of my favorite specialist pollinators and one of the first to emerge, one of the first flowers to emerge is Spring Beauty. It has these white flowers with pink veins, and they're very small. They don't get really over 6 inches. And there is a bee called the Spring Beauty minor bee that feeds pretty much exclusively on Spring Beauty. And Spring Beauty has pink pollen, so the bees that visit it get dusted in pink. Let's see, Trout Lily, which was available. I don't know if it's sold out. Your crop failed. Oh, well, Trout Lily's another one that has a specialist minor bee that visits it. There's a lot of specialist bees. Another thing you can do is planting in groupings. You might know that already. It reduces the work for pollinators. So honeybees and generalist native bees do tend to, when they go out, visit the same flower over and over again. Even if over the course of a season they may visit many different flowers, they're like, I'm doing this one now, and I'm just going to visit this one. So it can reduce the work they have to do to get resources to plant in groups. All right, so we talked about food a lot. Let's talk about habitat, which I think is one of the things that, in an effort to keep landscapes tidy, a lot of times people hurt the biodiversity in their yard by not providing habitat. You got to have food, you got to have habitat, and you got to have not the constant presence of pesticides all around you to have successful insect life. So in habitat, so many times the thing that is the right thing to do, I think, is also the aesthetically pleasing thing to do. Having layers in your garden. If you just got ground covers, you're really missing out on connecting layers that connect the canopy, so trees, shrubs, vines that connect them, and a ground cover layer will maximize the amount of habitat that you are creating and more visually engaging. Don't mulch every inch of your bare soil. Well, I am glad that I don't have a lawn I have to take care of. When I do see lawns that are patchy, and as long as they're not getting mowed too frequently, they can be a home for ground nesting bees. And when I say that, I don't mean the ones that you step in the hole and then you got to run real fast because you've got a bunch of ground nesting bees chasing you. Not over 90% of our native bees are solitary. They're gentle. You guys might notice them, but I think most people don't notice them. They notice the minority of bees live in hives. And so like the Spring Beauty minor bee, it lives in the ground. It's a single hole, single bee. It's laying its eggs in its single hole. It doesn't have anything to defend. It's very gentle. But if you mulch an area that Spring Beauty minor bee is living in, it can't get up through that layer of mulch. It actually needs the bare soil. And you'll see them in the spring. You'll see in areas with a lot of minor bees, mining bees. They're called mining bees because they dig holes in the ground like a miner. It's not miner as in small. It's miner as in like headlamp. Anyway, what was I saying? You'll see, if you see a bunch of them in one area, it will look like a bunch of ant holes. But if you watch them, but big ant holes with a larger hole, and you'll see these little bees going to and from their holes, and sometimes just hanging out right at the entrance to their hole. Anyway, so don't mulch all your bare soil, and because 70% of our native bees make their homes in the ground. And the other 30% are stem and wood dwelling. So in pithy stems, I did bring, to perfume the table, I brought bee balm and some of the mountain mints, which are wonderfully fragrant, and they have hollow stems. Joe Pye weed is another species. There's a lot of herbaceous plants that have hollow stems, and those are important bee nesting. And I feel like every spring, people are like, "Can I cut my stems back now?" So when I started out in horticulture and had my own yard, and I wasn't thinking more deeply about the landscape, my inclination was cut everything to the ground because it will look tidy. And now I look at that, I'm like, I was bulldozing homes. So cutting stems back to 8 to 24 inches, you've just made a perfect tube home for your insect. And now when I look at that, that is what is beautiful to me because it is a home. So I actually have a picture for how to create habitat for stem nesting bees. This is like what to do during different seasons to maximize nesting. This is from the Xerces Society as well. Let's see. So yeah, so even really small actions you take can have an enormous impact on providing habitat and food. The other thing, I have one sign in my yard, and it's leave the leaves. Because most people move their leaves. But my whole front yard is under the shade of a tree, and it's all spring ephemerals. And I don't move the leaves. And I have, the Xerces Society does sell a sign that says leave the leaves, and it has an explanation for why there are leaves in my yard. So people going by, they understand that it's not that I was lazy and didn't want to move them. Also, leaving the leaves, I'm supporting all the things that live in the leaf litter layer, including the roots of, and below that, the tree roots. So I think of leaf litter as the insulation in your home. If you took it all out, it'd be very cold in the winter. You'd be very hot in the summer. Yeah, so it helps insulate the roots. It helps hold moisture so that the tree roots don't dry out as quickly, or plant roots in general, not just tree roots. And it provides a great habitat. So in all manner of life, overwinter in those leaves. Like, there isn't a great time of year to remove your leaves because there's different emergences that happen at different times of year. So I brought, this is the morning cloak butterfly. And this is on one of the first warm mornings in spring. This is one of the first butterflies that it overwinters in its adult form in the leaf litter. It will. And if you walk through the woods, I haven't yet to see this, but I definitely have. There's someone who walks the forest walk at Longwood, and he's like, I'm out hunting for this because this is one of the first, warm days of spring. So I want to see a morning cloak emerging from the leaf litter. And then the Luna moth, it's much later in the season. And they overwinter in cocoons in the leaf litter. And the cocoons look just like the leaves in the leaf litter. So it's not like you could sort through the leaves carefully as you remove them. You could just be shredding or disposing of Luna moth cocoons, which if you've never seen a Luna moth, I know I keep saying things are magical. They are so magical too. Let's see. So, and I'm building good soil. Leaves make amazing soil. And I can rely on the wood ants in my yard to help decompose those leaves and help carry that nutrients underground. And at the same time, the ants are helping spread the seeds of one of the plants I have, Trillium, in my yard. I have Dutchman's breeches. There are many of our spring ephemerals that require ants to disperse their seeds. And without the presence of the ants, they can't get their seeds dispersed. So I'm happy to have those as well as aerating the soil to aid nutrient cycling. All right, so habitat. Another thing you can do habitat-wise that for me was like I also don't want to have to mow was reducing lawn. I reduced mine to 0. Easier if you have a small yard. And I had a nearby park that I could use for playing croquet or other recreation. So yeah, consider lawn alternatives. One of the plant trials I put in here that Mount Cuba Center did was lawn alternatives. They looked at sedges. And in addition to just looking at how the sedges grew uncut, they did also do low-frequency mowing on some of the sedges if you wanted the appearance of a lawn, but to mow less, use less fossil fuels, have more weekend time. All right, and they kind of said, hey, these are the best sedges if you'd like to replace your lawn with sedges. That stay shorter, so you don't have to worry about them getting, 2 feet high. Yeah. So, all right. How am I doing on time?
You got all the time you want. Don't let him cut you off.
I don't have a watch. It's 10:05. Okay. All right. I think I'm doing okay. Yeah, I'm near the end, so I'll have plenty of time for questions. So, implementation strategies. The first thing any gardener should do, any land steward, get to know your site. It can be really easy to see that plant in the pot at the garden center and be like, that is gorgeous, I must grow that. That's the plant that grows really well in a pot. And as soon as you put it in the soil in your yard, it's like, oh, in a week, it just looks so sad. Sometimes the plants that want to grow best in your yard are the ones that look worst in pots. So an example of that is there's a phlox species that I find really hard to get at garden centers sometimes, and that's the creeping phlox, which is Phlox stolonifera. I think a lot of nurseries or garden centers find it annoying to grow because it wants to creep out of the pot. It wants to spread across your yard, but it's gorgeous, and that's great, and it should be allowed to do that. Whereas Phlox sublata, which is, I think it's called the moss pink or something, it looks a little bit more like a shag rug. And it always looks fantastic in pots, and people always buy it in pots. The thing is, it wants really good drainage. So if you have clay soils at home and you put it in your clay soils, it'll just it won't form a nice carpet for you. So it helps to know your site and know what plants will do in your site well. I know that's just sort of common sense, but yeah, all right. And knowing that within a genus, so like the goldenrods, like the asters, there are a lot of species within those groups. And even milkweeds. There is a milkweed for every yard situation. If you have a spot where you just want to let it spread, and it's maybe not it's kind of average, somewhat heavy soil, you can grow the common milkweed. I wouldn't put that in a place where I wanted it to stay contained. But then there's also butterfly weed, which is a type of milkweed with the orange flowers. That's the one to grow if you have a really dry, well-drained garden. If you have
got that today, too.
it's a beautiful plant. Make sure it has good drainage, or it won't be happy. If you have poor drainage in a rain garden, there's a swamp milkweed for you. If your entire property is woods, there is a woodland milkweed. It's less common, you gotta look for it. It might take a little more sourcing, but it's there. Let's see, work within your capacity. So I think in spring, I often overcommit myself to things. I always dream bigger than I can do, and I have to remind myself to work within my capacity. When I made the choice to year one that I didn't want lawn anymore, I didn't have the money or time to plant my entire yard with perennials. What I ended up doing was I was like, okay, I'm going to make this area the vegetable garden. That's all from seed. I'm going to do it all from seed there. And then I chose annual species that I knew were easy to grow from seed. And I'm like, you're just going to be a placeholder until I can fill this area with perennials. It worked out. So the first couple years, I had this area that was just a lot of enormous amaranths with a lot of like, what else did I grow underneath them? I feel like the amaranths were like the dominant thing because they took up a lot of space. And they were gorgeous. But now I couldn't grow them because I have too much competition now for them with all the perennial species I've got going. Let's see. So add perennials over time as budget allows. Take little bites. And also, even if you feel like you know your site well, I often just buy one or two of a species if I haven't grown it before to see how it does. And if it comes back after a year and it looks good the second year, that's when, because I do want to plant in the groupings, that's when I buy more and add to those groupings so that I can get a nice grouping of plants. Also, I do like trying to buy the same species from multiple sources, because if you are getting a plant that has been propagated through division, you might be getting two genetically identical plants. Depends. But to get more species diversity, and by doing that, a lot of species, especially shrubs, are self-sterile or less likely to go to seed if they have a closely related individual. So the pawpaw I mentioned, it's completely self-sterile. If you only have one tree, you'll never get fruit. If you've got two, but they're basically genetically the same, no fruit. So by buying from different sources, there's more of a chance that I'm going to get these plants establishing and seeding in, and so that they'll fill in the way I want them to. Okay. Let's see, so plant selection for boosting biodiversity in your landscape. In addition to the resources I already mentioned that had all the keystone species, and I would also recommend, does anyone here use the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center plant finder? One person, or two, yes.
I'm from Texas.
Okay, yes. So the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center is based in Austin, Texas. I have a dream of going there one day. I haven't been there, but they created this excellent plant finder tool where you can search by state. You can say, hey, I'm in Pennsylvania. I only want to see plants native to Pennsylvania. I only want to see plants with red flowers. I want them to bloom in this season. I want them to be this tall. You can like enter all of your parameters, including moisture levels and sun levels, and it will give back it's a fairly comprehensive list of plants for your situation. So you've got this spot in your yard and you're like, what do I do with this spot? And I have nothing blooming. That's a great resource. And I'm going to tout once again the Mount Cuba Center plant trials. All right. So, yes.
Does that reference include deer tolerance?
I think that it does. But I can't say with 100% certainty. I actually did a printout of the search form.
There's a North Carolina extension as well.
Oh, hi.
Hey. Oh, the North Carolina extension does a good job of herbivory stuff. Was that what you were going to say?
Yes, I was going to say that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I wasn't sure about that. And I am looking at the Lady Bird Johnson one, and it is not giving me that. But that's an easy thing to cross-reference against something else. And I have found that deer are deer-resistant plants. Deer are always interested in trying new things in your yard. They're observing your yard as they move through, and anything new they might take a bite out of, even if it says it's resistant. So, yeah.
So when they're baby plants, it might be best to throw a little cage on it.
Yes,
If
you
you
can
have
either
those
put a
resources.
cage on it, or sometimes what I will do when I first plant a new plant is I will put a deer repellent on it so that the first bite they get of that plant is so bad that hopefully they won't go back. But then after you get past that it's a new plant phase, hopefully they'll leave it alone. If they don't, then cage. But yeah, let's see. So I'm going to go through a succession of plants that were at the plant sale. Most of them are at the plant sale, but some of them have already been sold. For spring, early plants, one of my favorite is the Virginia bluebells, which I don't have here, but it's all been sold. But for people who ordered early and got Virginia bluebells, you'll notice that they're yellowing, and that's normal. It's a spring ephemeral. They go dormant after they grow actively for 2 months, and then no matter how well you take care of them, it's just their natural life cycle, they go dormant. And it's a species I recommend planting under native shrubs that leaf out later, so that, so I didn't really get into invasive species, but one issue with introduced species is they're often on a different clock than where you are, because they evolved in a totally different place where the seasons were different. So most of our native shrubs all leaf out at about the same time. Whereas a lot of times in the spring, I can pick out introduced species that are showing up in natural landscapes just because they will be so far ahead sometimes, like fully leafed out when other things are just starting to break bud. So if you were to plant a Virginia bluebell under a double file viburnum, that introduced viburnum species might shade out, or under a burning bush. Hopefully you don't have a burning bush. That shrub would probably shade out your bluebell too early. But if you were to grow it under, say, a sweet pepper bush, or let's see, Itea is sweet pepper. Itea. Sweet spire, thank you. Virginia sweet spire, it would leaf out later, or one of our native viburnums, like which you brought. Viburnum dentatum, I love this plant. It's one of my spring choices. So this would be a good combo. Arrowwood viburnum, grow your Virginia bluebells under it, let them go dormant, and Virginia bluebells are pollinated by, they need long-tongued bees because they've got pink buds that open to blue, long tubular flowers, and when you look at something with a long tubular flower, you know it has to be something with a very long tongue that can get its tongue all the way down to where the nectar is in the flower. Let's see, and then so that would be your early season. So the earliest pollinators would go to something like that, or spring beauty. Your mid-season in spring, great plant that doesn't look super exciting right now, but this is a great plant. This is Robin's plantain, and this is good for a tough site in the garden. I've grown it underneath a sugar maple, which if you've planted things under sugar maples, they have very fibrous roots. It's a lot of competition. This is a plant that can handle that. And it has flowers that look a lot like, it's related to fleabane, which is the purple here, but they have flowers bigger than that. And this is a cultivar that forms a really nice mat in areas like that. So Robin's plantain. Oh, and this is the cultivar Lynnhaven carpet. It does form a carpet. And you can either let it go to seed, or if it's front of the house, in the display garden, I would cut the flowers back after they bloomed. But in my own yard, I'd probably just let them go to seed. Let's see. So late spring into early summer. There's often a lull. We have this like peak of blooms in spring, then there's often a lull before the summer flowers get on board. So that can be a time when you're looking for things to fill a gap. I really like foxglove beard's tongue, which hasn't started blooming yet, but I have a lot of it in my yard. It blooms during that time. And the viburnum dentatum, the arrowwood viburnum, this is one that blooms late spring into early summer. And another one, did you have this in the sales, Sheena? The bottlebrush buckeye was another one. Well, maybe. That's a really good one too. All right, get that out of the way. All right, our summer groupings. Monarda fistulosa. These can get quite robust, and this is, they get pink flowers on them. A lot of people really like the red Monarda didyma, which you don't see growing wild around here as much, and I feel like gets worse powdery mildew. So wild bergamot, wonderfully fragrant, blooms for a really long time, supports pollinators for a really long time. Robust plant. Another midsummer plant that I mentioned as a species that you could underplant with Virginia bluebells is Clethra ulnifolia, which is, so wild bergamot. Clethra is the sweet pepper bush. And that's one that will attract hummingbirds as well. And there's a cultivar called hummingbird that stays shorter. That tends to be one of the more common ones you see. And then late summer, one of the ones I think I might actually buy this plant, because I don't have it in my yard and I should, is New York ironweed. These get sizable and they get covered with these intense purple flowers, just so vibrant. So this is a good late summer. And then our fall lineup with plants from the plant sale are Solidago shortii. The one thing that keeps people from buying goldenrods is they think that they're all going to take over their yards. One of the things that Mount Cuba Center looked at is this one that stays put or is this one that spreads? And sometimes you want that spread. You want that competition in an area. But other times you want a plant that's just going to stay put. Solar Cascade goldenrod is one that is a clumper and is not going to take over. So I might get one of these too. Though I have a number of goldenrods in my yard that are all clumping form. Let's see. And I said there's a plant for every situation. People think of goldenrods as just being full sun plants, but there are goldenrods for shade as well. And in my front yard, the shady part, I have the blue-stemmed goldenrod, which is Solidago casei, and it does great in part shade. Let's see. And then last, we have the panicled aster. So aster's one of the keystone plants. Good deal, $3. If you don't have asters and goldenrods, maybe you should make room for them. And then the last one, I tried to pick a woody plant for every season because once again, you should have layers in the garden. One of my favorite fall flowering woody plants is our common witch hazel that flowers so late. It flowers at the same time that it's getting its fall color. It has yellow fall color and yellow flowers, and when it loses its leaves, it still looks like it has fall color because it's the same shade. Yeah. And the last component I wanted to talk about, two last things. So we talked about boosting biodiversity with food and habitat. Food plus habitat minus pesticides plus community. And you have a great community here today. If you have an overabundance of mountain mint, of, golden Alexanders. So I didn't mention, I should have talked about the things in this vase some more. The golden Alexanders, specialist host or larval host species for another swallowtail butterfly. This is the black swallowtail butterfly feeds on this. I saw some people were getting dill. Dill is a plant that also supports black swallowtail butterfly but is annual. If you have a wet kind of clay soil somewhere in your yard, golden Alexanders will spread happily there. They're in the carrot family. They stay pretty low, and they'll support the caterpillars of that species of butterfly. Sorry to jump around, but I did want to point those out. Anyway, and that's one you could end up with an overabundance of. So if you have too much of that, too much mountain mint, share them with a neighbor, and that way you're increasing the impact of having these native plants in the landscape that support the life around us. So go to a plant swap. And this is sort of a tangent, but in case anyone had a question about like climate change and how that's affecting pollination and what you choose for your yard, currently the USDA has their climate change tree atlas is still visible on the USDA website. It says something about retiring it in June. I don't know what that means exactly, if we're still going to have access to it or not. But I recommend you check it out. You can print stuff out for it. When it comes to planning for climate change, I am especially looking at tree species. So when I'm looking at the oaks, if we're looking at plants that we want to be in the landscape in 100 years, I'm looking for plants where we're on the southern end of their native range. Northern end, not ones on the southern end, because we're going to be moving into that. And the USDA Climate Change Tree Atlas has modeled potential suitable habitat for 125 native species of trees in the east, and they give you a grid, and for every tree species under different climate change models, they give you whether it's going to be whether we think we're going to see a large decline in abundance, or whether we're going to see potentially new habitat for the species, that sort of thing. So that was just sort of the add-on at the end. So yeah, thank you for your time, your enthusiasm, and maybe your questions.
Yes, hi, Pandora.
Okay,
Thank you so
hi.
much. I really appreciate everything you did for us today. Hi. Yes. Okay. I appreciate everything you did for us today. I do have a comment, and I was like,
Yes.
oh, I want to share this. When you were talking about stem nesting bees,
Yeah.
and how we shouldn't tidy up because of that, I've noticed that if I leave my woody stems, it supports the new growth of that plant, so it doesn't flop as
It
much.
sort of forms like
Like a cage.
A
Also,
cage.
more importantly, if I leave them and they're pokey, the deer can't get to the basal foliage.
Ah.
So they poke their little noses on my plant and they can't get it. So,
multiple benefits.
Yeah.
Yes, and yeah.
But
And you don't want to tidy up in fall because you also want to leave the seeds for birds
right,
on a lot of species.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
So good. Yeah.
But
actually, it
you
doesn't
know-
all have to be questions. Comments are welcome too.
I have all the comments. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to Howard, who has a question.
How do you feel about the tubes you can put around trees when you plant them?
Oh, that's such a good question. So, deer protection, very important topic, right? It is a conversation. So, I think land stewards have to balance the realities of their resources for management with what's best for the trees. So, and not all tree tubes are created equal. A tree tube that doesn't have any vent holes in the side creates this humid environment, no wind gets through. There are tree tubes that do have slit holes that are somewhat better. I have grown trees with cages and tubes, and cages have the problem of they can become a trellis for vines, and it can take a lot of time to hand clear those areas. Tubes, the concern is you have a floppy plant that isn't like, I don't know, I think of it as getting exercise, because wind on plants does trigger getting girth. So I think if you have 1,000 trees to take care of and you're on your own, a tube might be right in an open area if you can't possibly do the hand clearing as one person. I think if you are planting canopy gaps in a shaded area, I would always go cages because tubes don't let enough light through. Unless you're planting a tree that is tall enough that is already sticking out. So there's so many factors. Answers are complicated. So if you were planting a tree that's this tall and you plant it in the woods with a tree tube, it is really going to struggle because the tube inevitably cuts some of the light that gets to that tree. So it's shaded even further, and sun is plant food. So you're kind of starving that plant. If you're growing in full sun, tubes are an option, especially if maintenance is an issue. Does that, yeah? Have you used both?
Yeah, but then they get neglected and die.
Which do you prefer?
I think I've had better success with the tube.
Yeah.
I don't have a big set. I haven't done it often. So.
Okay. If the area is going to be neglected, I am going to put it in the tube. If it's in the sun.
Yes.
The best thing is if you are planting a really, really large area and you can afford a deer fence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so other options I've seen out there. Actually, something I did when I took care of Pierce's Woods that's a little bit more decorative, and I learned this from, oh, man.
Just
My
make it up.
brain. No, he runs Greenlight Plants. He was one of the co-founders of North Creek Nurseries. Why is his name escaping me? Anyway, this guy, great guy, showed me that he was using branches to create sort of like a nest of branches around the tree. Like a big donut. You don't want to stack up branches right at the base of a tree because it can be a place where rodents find safe and then they'll gnaw on the base of your tree. But the idea is making a ring that's big enough that, because if you're trying to protect from buck rubs specifically, deer are going to go to the easiest thing to rub. They don't want to walk through a pile of branches to rub your tree. So I would make these like nests around the tree with branches. They had to be tall enough that it was uncomfortable to walk through, and they had to be wide enough that a deer standing on the outside couldn't rub their antlers on the tree. And that was kind of my more aesthetically pleasing, with no plastic and metal way of doing it. I'd have to replenish the branches now and then, but on a small scale in a home garden, it's an option. And one of the upsides of using that method I found was it really actually helped hold leaves at the base of the tree. It became like a catcher for leaves, which helped create a nice mulch layer around the tree, which I felt like gave the tree a boost. So there's always other options. And on a totally different scale, I've attended a webinar on doing slash walls in, like, if forestry is being done in an area, and actually making a deer fence not out of a fence but out of wood itself. And that's on a massive scale for doing regenerative reforesting. Okay.
This is deer. Is this on? Can you hear me?
It's on.
This is deer related as well. When
Okay.
a few of us were up at Penn State 2 years ago for a bee workshop,
Yeah.
I asked them, I'm like, why are there bars of soap in I forget what that, who was with me?
Oh, yeah, like ivory soap.
They were grapevines. And I asked somebody, and they said they used Irish Spring to deter deer.
Okay.
I'm just wondering,
I've heard of that. I've never done it.
well, so hanging a bar of soap around my tree. So I have a fig tree that the deers like to come and munch on. So I took an Irish Spring bar of soap and I shaved it with like a cheese shaver, and I just sprinkled it on it. The deer didn't touch it.
Interesting.
But every time it rained, I had to go and apply it again.
Yeah, my only concern with doing that over a long period of time is
Environmentally, what does it do? Right?
soap is alkaline, and it could over time affect soil pH. But
it'd be
I
great for
don't
bluebirds.
know how much soap you would have to apply, but it's why you shouldn't just take laundry soap and dump it in your yard. And I know there was an area, working on a historic property, there was an area where we just kept having plants dying, and we were doing soil tests, and we're like, was this the washing area? Were they dumping detergent here? Because it seems like it seemed like the pH, we couldn't get the acidity down on it, and we were losing evergreens in that area.
I would never have done it, but Penn State did it, so I was
Yeah.
like, it's got to be okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea of a bar is it might dissolve much more slowly than taking it shaved. Yeah. I don't know, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that we've all tried. I have a fermented garlic spray that I make for the deer.
One of my
That works
volunteers
sometimes.
made something with like rotten eggs
Some
on
people do
his
that.
deck, and I was like, whoa.
Whoa.
He used to
This
work for
year-
DuPont,
this
and I'm
year
like,
I'm
you're
using-
making weird, gross yeah, but he said it worked.
Yeah.
But then he had a spill.
This year I'm using a product called Plant Skin. It's like
Yes.
it's blood from the meat industry, I guess, that's been repurposed as a deterrent.
Yep.
It's been working
I've
for me.
used plant skin too. That's the stuff I have.
Okay.
And if you leave, because there's a kind that you can apply dry, and there's one that you can mix in water. But the stuff you mix in water, if you let it sit too long, like it coagulates like blood. It gets real gross.
I just use the granules around, and it only works for like the low plants. But it's been helping my deer situation. Who else has questions?
Or comments?
Or comments. Conversation.
I guess I have kind of a comment that's kind of a question. I have an area in my backyard where I would love to turn it into a meadow.
Close. Yeah.
You have an area in your backyard that you want
And
to turn into a meadow.
Turn into a meadow. And I've been thinking about this for years. My wife says, it's never going to work. There's so many invasives around us that as soon as you kill everything and get the meadow going, that all these invasives are going to come right back. And we have autumn olive, and we have knotweed, and we have you name it, we've got it. And she's right, as far as I'm concerned. So, what do you do?
That's tricky. So meadows, so a lot of times people think of meadows as a habitat that you can just make and leave. But the truth is meadows are ephemeral. And they're a really rare ecosystem. So I don't want to dissuade you because they're extremely valuable because they are so rare. So there are certain species that require meadows. So bluebirds, for example, to find the insects they need to feed their young, they need meadows. But the forms of disturbance that traditionally it would take for a meadow to exist are not things a lot of people want in their backyard. The way you get meadows in the east, big fire. So the meadow that I help manage, we try to burn about a third of it a year. And burning has different, there's kind of three ways of getting a meadow: burning, mowing, grazing, periodic disturbance. All of those are going to have different results. So if you mow, you're going to have a lot of thatch left, and it can be hard to get, certain species will fall out of the mix. After we have a burn, there's species that will have fallen out that will suddenly reappear. Their seeds were dormant, they weren't able to compete with the perennials. These annual species come back that like Rudbeckia hirta, one of the black-eyed Susans in our meadow. After a burn, it always shows up a lot. I'm not giving you a solid answer. I'm saying it's worth doing, but mowing it periodically, which I know goes against leaving the stems up, if you can't burn it, because most people don't want fire in their backyard. So,
Notably the fire department.
yeah. How large an area? Half an acre.
Yeah, like talking about invasive species management.
Species management is an important part of that equation. Yeah, so it depends on the species. That's a whole nother long talk. It's species dependent, location dependent, wherever possible, like timed mowing can be helpful, but for certain species, targeting them so that they don't become everywhere So targeted selective application of herbicide rather than broadcast non-selective, but half an acre.
Yeah, the funny thing is that the barberry shows up everywhere. And I've seen all my neighbors have barberry planted. They planted, intentionally planted, but it just is a real major invasive. It's really hard to do.
It hurts.
This has been a fantastic talk. I'm not a plant person, and I've enjoyed it. I've learned a bunch. I want to thank you, Pandora, for coming out.
Thank you for having me. And I'm going to just reiterate, work within your capacity and think about what your capacity is, because there are certainly companies that can help maintain landscapes like that. Think about what you can do and what you're willing to put into it, and plant accordingly. Yes.
So I want to do a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to, don't read the front of this t-shirt, but do look at the back. This is for you,
Oh,
and it's a,
I thought I was supposed to get off the stage now.
no. Together we can feed the bees.
Oh,
All bees,
okay.
but honeybees. We're honey beekeepers, so we tend to go there.
Hopefully the things you're doing to help honeybees are also helping
Helping.
other
Exactly.
insects as well. So thank
Exactly.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and you're going to be around for a bit to
Yes.
talk?
If anyone has more questions that you just want to come up and ask me, I'm definitely getting the ironweed and I'll be around. So, okay.
Excellent.